So this is it, the final round of the 2017 Blancpain GT Sports Club. It's the main race, the 40-minute feature race here at the Circuit Catalunya. Conditions are tricky. Rain has been falling fairly lightly, but it's down on the ground for the past half hour. So a slick grid. In fact, it's now picked up over the past few minutes. As you can see, the puddling on the outside of the circuit. Humidity's been high all morning, nearly 85% humidity. Track temperature kept in check by the rain, 18.5 degrees. Anthony Ponce, who won the sprint race yesterday, the 25-minute race, will be starting on pole position. He'd already wrapped up the title before he came here. This, the 6th round, so the 12th race of the championship, and he has absolutely dominated proceedings in his ACA ASP Mercedes. Christoph Ulrich, championship challenger, will be starting from the back of the grid along with Karim Oj, who had a bit of an accident yesterday. So we'll see them working their way through the order, I'm sure. It's very tight in the Iron Cup rankings for drivers aged 60 and over. Stephen Earle will be starting immediately behind Klaus-Dieter Freres. He has a 1-point advantage. And just to keep Klaus on his toes, he just jokingly said to him yesterday, do you remember Senna and Prost at Suzuka 1989? And walked off. And I don't think Klaus did, but he's been thinking about it ever since. But there is our pole starter. You wouldn't expect anything untoward from Earle at all, but it was a good little joke at the time. But the 72 on pole was yesterday, took the lead at the start, was never troubled, and towards the end of the race, the French racer Anthony Ponce really started to stretch his advantage, won by eventually nearly 20 seconds from Maurice Ritchie in the ACA ASP Mercedes. 2 of them on the front row yesterday, 2 of them on the front row today. The start will be behind the safety car, however, as it was in the previous race on the agenda here, simply because track conditions are so treacherous. We had rain yesterday afternoon, but they got their race done in the dry. Today, very different conditions, and as you can see, the rain's gone from a little bit of drizzle to proper rain. So for the final race of the season, it's something a little bit different from what most of the people would have been expecting when they came down here to Spain. End of September, start of October, they might have thought warmish weather and sunshine. This they have not got. So 16 turns of the Circuit de Catalunya will be extra tricky. In fact, when I saw the safety cars going around and inspecting the track, one of them ran a little bit wide at turn 10. And I feel fairly certain once these drivers get let loose with this big dark cloud hanging over the Circuit de Catalunya, they will have to be super cautious. So the front row, the 2 ACA ASP Mercedes, the grey one of Anthony Ponce, the red, white and black version of Maurice Ritchie. Then on the second row, the Ferrari of Patrick Van Glabica and the Lamborghini of Coach McKenzie going better and better in the series. So look how much spray the safety car is kicking up as it goes around. That's one of them. The other one is just leading the pack away. It's relatively dry. And I say relatively on the start-finish straight where we see the cars now. It's a 40-minute race. The clock has already started. You can see it's ticking down for 40 minutes. And looking down to pit exit, I think we're waiting for Karim Oj to come out of there. He will be starting at the very back of the grid. Christopher Ulrich should be the last car on the grid. And look how much spray, even at low speed, these cars are kicking up. It looks worse than it really is, simply because that's a foreshortening effect of a camera shooting a long way up the grid. But you can see the SC boards and the waved yellow flags absolutely overtaking this lap. And here is Karim Oj, who unfortunately yesterday clattered into Lucchini's Ferrari down at turn 10 as they fought over 5th, 6th and 7th positions. Some really fierce battling. He apologised profusely for the contact. And only one headlight working on Willem Paulus de Pundit's Mercedes as he picks his way around the field. Good to have him back in the championship. This championship, it's in just completing its 3rd season, set up for bronze-level drivers, for gentlemen drivers, and a stepping stone, if you would, between club and international competition, club and pro. Here comes Karim Oj, the only BMW in the race, starting from pit exit. But look how wet it is. So let's go down the starting grid. It's the 2 ACA ASP Mercedes at the front. Anthony Ponce, Maurice Ritchie. Anthony, the champion already, and yesterday he proved exactly why. The Ferrari of Patrick Van Glabica and the Coach McKenzie Lamborghini from HP Racing on row 2. Nicolas van Dierendonck back with us in his Ombre Racing Lamborghini, and Klaus-Dieter Freres leading the Iron Cup from 6th on the grid. Oliver Baumann in his SLS AMG Mercedes, and Stephen Earle on row 4. Leading the way in the Extra Cup class, Dilanta Malagamua from Sri Lanka, and Pierre Filioni, also from the Boutson Racing team, like Karim Oj. Full grid of cars. We will have 11 complete rows of cars. That's 22 cars coming out to play 40 minutes. But as you can see, this weekend. It was dry yesterday. It is now increasingly wet today. A lot of spray being kicked up. I'll notify you when the safety car is going to come in. But for this lap, at least, the pack running around behind the safety car, trying to see where the puddling is. I don't think there's so much puddling at the moment, but that high shot taken from above 12, looking down to turns 11 and 10 at the bottom of the infield straight, you can see the red area on the outside of the circuit, super shiny with all the water that's sitting there. But luckily the drivers are on the grey stuff, the black stuff, and we'll be trying to shift that water. But I think with the rain still coming down and coming down increasingly hard, it's going to be a case of driving on tiptoes. And a driver who seems to drive in any conditions with considerable aplomb is Anthony Potts, who's leading the way. Maurice Ritchie also racing in the main race for ACA ASP, the Blancpain GT Series race, using this as a sighter. It may still be wet at 3 o'clock this afternoon when the GT Series races go. So a further lap behind the safety car, quite clearly, that hasn't pulled in. Anthony Potts now starting to pick up the pace a bit behind the safety car. Waved yellow flags all around the circuit. So the race is underway, but until the safety car withdraws, no overtaking. That is absolutely clear. Those two ACA ASP Mercedes already sitting some way clear of Patrick Van Glabbeker. You can just see the red nose of the Ferrari, who will be starting third, coming down, trying to get the spray away from him. Now let's see how slippery it is behind the safety car. That's going through the chicane. Lights and all. Big moment there for Maurice Ritchie. He's got that out of his system. So in many ways, that's what these laps are behind the safety car, a chance to find out how much grip, or in some cases, how little grip you have around the circuit. So a bit of a wake-up call there for Maurice, but he now knows exactly how wet it is when he needs to be getting the braking done and then eventually the power down as they come out of turns 14 and 15, the chicane. So the two ACA ASP Mercedes leading the way around, then Patrick Van Glabbeker in his AF Corsa Ferrari, Coach McCanty in HP Racing Lamborghini, then the second of the Lamborghinis from Ombra Racing, that's Nicolas van Dierendonck, and then in 6th place overall, Klaus-Dieter Freres, the leading Iron Cup runner. And trying to catch up with the back of the pack there is the one and only BMW M6, Boots on Ginion at number 2, Karim Oj. He really wants to catch himself onto the tail of the pack. You can see them coming down the hill. That's the race leader behind the safety car. Anthony Potts going down the dip between turns 5. That's turn 6, the left-hander at the bottom of the slope. Then they go to turn 7, very tricky corner. There they are. 7 goes very quickly into 8. As you can see, the left-hander becomes a right-hander, and then perhaps the finest corner on the circuit, turn 9, top of the hill. But for number 6, that is a rather unfortunate embarrassment. That's Daniel Vogt, one of the 2 HP Racing cars, and he has slipped off going around the circuit. He was starting halfway up the order. Sorry, it's Pierre Filioni. Daniel Vogt. That's a Boots on Ginion car. So let's see what happened. Oh, got it wrong coming down the slope. Well, that just shows how treacherous the conditions are. So strike 1 from the order. So that effect, it's not a non-start, it's a retirement under the safety car. Now, can that car be moved? I think that will lead to a longer period of safety car while that is dragged away from the gravel. You can see the different shades of grey in the sky, the hills in the background, but the rain is coming down now harder and harder. There was a particularly dark cloud immediately over the circuit. Great work from the marshals, straight in to try and hook up that Boots on Ginion Lamborghini and get it out of the gravel. But the safety car continues out of the chicane, going around for at least another lap, just coming around turn 16, the final corner of the circuit. So we already have one faller before the race proper has got underway. With those 2 Lamborghinis, Coach McCanty and Nicolas van Dierendonck, you can see how tricky it is as they come out of that chicane. They don't want to get to the curbing on the outside because that stores water far more than the circuit does itself. So unfortunate for Pierre Filioni, but great work by the crews to drag that car clear so quickly. Should just get it onto the grass and get it away from that gravel trap. And all along, the clock is ticking down. Yesterday was a 25-minute race. Today is 40 minutes. We started behind the safety car, but look at that shot. That just shows how the conditions on the start-finish straight are getting worse and worse and worse. For all the drivers, each lap, the conditions are changing. So rather than thinking, OK, I got used to it on the out lap behind the safety car, I now know where the puddles are. The puddles are getting deeper. And suddenly Patrick Van Glabbeker, who started from 3rd behind the safety car, has had a spin. Coach McCanty's had to hit the anchors and stop behind. And you can see as Van Glabbeker's Ferrari runs over the curbs there, just how much water is sitting in them. Absolute key. You do not want to touch the curbs when it's as wet as this. The track is where the grip is. The painted parts, most certainly not. And then you get the fluting of the curves. the rising and the falling, and everyone out on the circuit will be... Let's just have a look at... this is the second place, Maurice Ritchie. We've seen him have a twitch. He goes towards the outside of the circuit. Going to the inside where the track is sloping a little bit, there is more wet, and I don't know if we saw Van Dierendonck clipping a curb. He's got, sorry, Patrick Van Glabiker in the 488 Ferrari. Van Dierendonck 2 places further back in the 63 Lamborghini. But both Coach McCanty and Van Dierendonck had to slow right down. But third car down the hill, here it comes. Oh, now we've got 2 more. Baumann has gone off, and he was going to be starting from 7th on the grid. He's caught the back of Van Dierendonck. Whether Van Dierendonck got caught out himself, and that drew 68 into him. So we've got 1 spinner and 3 cars off already. This is really, really unfortunate. Can't see what happened now. You can see the safety car is out. We've got red flag. 2 cars stuck in the gravel around the course of the lap, so everyone's going to have to come to a standstill on the grid. The clock has now stopped at 32.5 minutes remaining, but from 5th on the grid, Van Dierendonck has gone off, and behind him Oliver Baumann, so somehow Klaus-Dieter Freres avoided it. So here's the car in 4th place, that's Coach McCanty. Then Van Dierendonck, we've lost Klaus-Dieter Freres, so Oliver Baumann's got out of order. Oh dear, this is really unfortunate indeed. There was nothing Van Dierendonck could do about it, and Oliver Baumann got it wrong coming down the slope, has taken them both off into the gravel. That's on the exit of turn 5, and that's going to take a while to get them out. So the red flag has been flown. The cars still working their way around the circuit. We'll come back and come to a standstill on the start-finish straight. So it was wet at the start of the race. It's getting wetter by the moment. There are the red flags being waved. All the drivers should have spotted that. Safety car is going to bring them into the pits. And the race has now been declared. It will not resume. That is that. So the rain are just simply too much at the moment. Cars cascading off the circuit. Drivers not entirely sure what they're supposed to be doing. Stay behind the safety car. But the message on the screen says it all. The race will not be resumed. So that means that Stephen Earle has taken the Iron Cup by the skin of his teeth, by 1 point over Klaus-Dieter Freres. So the drivers, racers, one and all, would have loved to carry on racing, but conditions clearly so perilous out around the circuit. It started with a wet circuit and even wetter curbing where the water hangs, but such has been the force of the rain since the start of this race behind the safety car. 3 cars have gone off. Another one has had a spin and kept going, and these were the top drivers in the field. So if they're starting to struggle, you can understand why the decision has been made. So for Oliver Baumann, that was an embarrassing moment coming down the hill. For Nicolas Van Dierendonck in the 63 Lamborghini, innocent party, couldn't get out of the way. In fact, wouldn't have seen it coming at that point. So the cars line astern forming up on the grid. They will all be waiting for full signal, but the message on the screen says it all. The race will not be resumed. I can't see that being rescinded. So that will count as a victory number 5 for Anthony Ponce, because he has led since the start of the race, started behind the safety cars. Half the field now have not gone onto the grid. They've actually gone straight into Parc Fermé. So in fact, that means he moves equal top on overall outright winners across the 3 years of the Blancpain GT Sports Club. That moves him up to 5 to go level with Mario Cordoni, and he's got all 5 Ponce this season, 5 across 12 races. This one though has reached its conclusion with the red flag having been waved. That message on the screen is unequivocal, because just look how hard the rain is coming down. It would be, if they thought it was perilous at the start, it has got a whole lot worse. And with the water, with so much gradient on the circuit, also there are points at which the water can run across the track when it becomes incredibly wet. The verges aren't soaked totally through yet, but you can see with the 63 Lamborghini and the 68 Mercedes deep in the gravel, those were in a dangerous position. So if you just turned on your screens to catch the 12th and final race of the 2017 Blancpain GT Sports Club, the series for AM drivers, the bronze drivers, to get a taste of these wonderful GT3 cars. It's been brought to a conclusion. That matters not, a little marker board having been damaged, but you can just see how treacherous the weather is. Really, really heavy rain here at the Circuit Catalunya. And we can't see the hills around the circuit. There is no chance the weather is going to improve in the immediate future. Yesterday it rained, but after a while we could see blue sky in the distance. But today there's been such a downpour over the past half hour. And you can see gravel all over the track. That's going to take a lot of sweeping to clear it. But already we've got to the point in which the circuit is puddling up. Doesn't happen immediately. This track generally drains pretty well, but it's come to a conclusion there. The season, as far as we understand, is over and out. So 12 races, but that was the one that didn't really get to happen. But the driver who started on pole position, Anthony Ponce and Maurice Ritchie, will take a 1-2 for ACA ASP. Of course, they would rather have gone and raced it out onto the circuit. But for Anthony Ponce, it's been a remarkable season. Now they're being flagged away back to the paddock, just waiting for the third starter, Patrick Van Glabacker, to get going. Coach McCann had enough, so is heading off. But just look, tire debris and rain just adding to the puddles by the moment. So very, very treacherous conditions, and it's decided enough is enough. So the gentleman drivers lead away. They would have gained experience in that. They would have. It's all about gaining experience for these bronze drivers, and they may never find a circuit as wet as one we've had here. Just waiting for the last handful of cars to go. That was Peter Gurka, who's joined the championship this weekend. So he's had a dry race for Kessel Racing in his Ferrari, and now a very, very wet race as well. So the last few cars just about to power clear. The GDL Racing Mercedes tucked in behind. That's Roberto Ranieri, and then Frédéric Jean-Marie Fangio. How's that for a famous name in the AF Corsa Ferrari? Trying to see if they have to do a further lap. Yes, they are. They're going around the circuit because they passed pit entry, of course, by sitting on the start-finish straight. And there is our Iron Cup champion by the merest of margins, by 1 point. Stephen Earle takes it. He would have loved being such a competitor, commutes across the Atlantic for his play, and he would have loved to have taken the battle to Klaus-Dieter Freres, but conditions have overtaken the field. So here we are. For the final round of the Blancpain GT Sports Club, we've still got the final round of the Blancpain GT Series, a 3-race this afternoon, and let's hope the conditions are clearing. And you know, even in the past 2 minutes, I'm starting to see lighter patches of sky to the west of the circuit, but sitting under a big grandstand. So, we don't know what black clouds are behind us, but the race has been declared null and void, so it doesn't count as a 5th win for Anthony Ponce. Message just coming through, so the points will be as they were yesterday after the 11th of the 12 scheduled races for 2017. So definite championship there for the driver just going across your screen in the 111 Kessel Ferrari. He wins the Iron Cup. So here, but overall, we knew Anthony Ponce was a champion before we came here. He added another win. Christoph Ulrich, who was starting at the back of the grid, holds on, therefore, to 2nd place overall. Karim OJ to 3rd. And super close in behind, but Anthony Ponce dominated the season. And just look, yes, there's a little bit of light sky in the distance, and that 1 point is all it takes for Stephen Earle to beat Klaus-Dieter Freres to the Iron Cup standings for the drivers aged 60 and over. And the season has come to a conclusion. The rain simply too heavy to come racing, but the 2017 Blancpain GT Sports Club season will be remembered for the supreme performance for ACA ASP in his Mercedes of the champion, Anthony Ponce.